January 1st of 2007 is when
Back to the Morning Brew today on Friday. It's March 29th. Thanks for watching us today here in Albuquerque live. You like our live shot downtown, looking to the Chemo Theater. This is the coolest view in the city, no doubt about it. Well, I'm Larry Aarons, along with Aaron Muffaletto. And our special guest here on the Morning Brew today is the Attorney General for the state of New Mexico, Gary King. Gary, welcome to the Morning Brew.
Thanks,
You
Larry.
got your
nice
brew
to
today? Good.
Yeah, I'm set.
Nice to have you. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, no,
You've been
good.
Attorney General since 2007. You're in your second term.
Correct. So 6 years goes by in a hurry. I told my folks when we first started out, I said, look, you know, we can only count on one term, so we're going to get as much done as we can in 4 years.
Yeah.
And then when I got my second term, you know, we had some things that were going opportunities, and so that was good. And now we're sort of have senioritis. You know, we're trying to figure out what we're going to do to wrap up. But there's a lot of work going on, and I'm really proud of my group.
Yeah, and just last week you were in Mexico meeting with the country's new federal attorney general about human and drug trafficking. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
True, yes. You know, actually back in 2007, we started a program where we trained investigators and prosecutors for the state of Chihuahua. We worked with their Attorney General's office because they're changing their judicial system from an inquisitorial-based system to an advocacy-based system. And so Chihuahua was the first state that made the change, and we did the training. Well, that expanded, and they wanted me to do the training for all of Mexico, and I said, we can't do that. So we started with the Conference of Western Attorneys General. All the Western AGs started training Mexican AG. So for about 6 years now, we've been working with them to help them build their capacity to fight the organized crime in Mexico, and certainly, you know, our issue is to keep them from doing that here. So there's a new administration in Mexico. They have a new president and therefore a new attorney general. And so we were able to get a meeting, the Western AGs, with the new attorney general of Mexico to talk about what we can do to continue our fight against the drug cartels and international criminal organizations that operate on both sides of the border.
Well, there's the official conversations you have with them and the private conversations. And in the private moments, do the Mexican legal authorities there express confidence that they're getting on top of this, or what have they said to you regarding what's really going on?
Well, it's a big issue. One of the things that we found is that the former Attorney General from Chihuahua is now working in a federal agency that the president there has formed to make sure that they continue their ongoing battle. And so that continuity, I think, is really important, and we want to show them that we have continuity here too. So it's a struggle. I think just 2 weeks before we were down there, the Attorney General from Morelos State had an attempt on his life, unsuccessfully so. And I think the day that we were there, there was an assassination of a couple of agents from the AG's office up in the area around Juarez. So I mean, there still are issues there. But I'm very proud to be associated with law enforcement in Mexico. There are people that risk their lives every day to go out and try and build a civil society in Mexico. And I think that if you look at the progress in Juarez, for instance, over the past 4 years, that the violence rate in Juarez is much lower than it was. And sometimes it moves around the country. There are other cities that are having some issues, but they're very dedicated to the struggle. We're very dedicated to providing the support that they need because it's very important for us. I mean, as the international criminal organizations improve their capability, and we're worried about trafficking in drugs, trafficking in guns, trafficking in human beings. You know, they infiltrate those crimes into all of the United States, and not just in New Mexico, but where we're on the border. You know, we're particularly concerned about the likelihood that those kind of things will come across the border here. So I think it's one of the most important things that we've been doing over the last 6 years on an ongoing effort to make our citizens safer. And the Attorney General there, I noticed, did a big press release after he met with us to make sure that people in Mexico know that we're working jointly to try and protect their citizens as well. So.
Because I have seen a lot more has been that we've been doing a lot more in our state to try to prevent the drug trafficking and human trafficking. I've seen like billboards everywhere.
Sure.
So that, I mean, do you have any statistics or the numbers on, like, has that gone down a lot?
Well, our office a couple of years ago started a big effort to to make sure that the public is more aware of the issues of human trafficking and trafficking victims and such. So you've seen our billboards. We have bus wraps here and on the buses in Albuquerque, and those send people for tips to a national hotline. And so if people all around the country, see something that they think is human trafficking, they can report it, then that gets reported back to us. I noticed just recently here that APD made another bust where they think that there was some human trafficking that was involved, particularly trafficking of a minor. And we're specifically interested in trying to protect our children from being trafficked, either sex trafficking or labor trafficking or whatever. But we're kind of focused on preventing the sexual exploitation of our children in New Mexico and around the country. So that effort, the public, law enforcement, it's everybody has to work together, I think, to bring these crimes down. And so I think that you're going to see more charges for human trafficking over the next few years, and that won't necessarily mean that there's more of the crime. It just means that we're bringing it out into the light, and that people are we're doing something about it.
Can I switch topics for a second? It seems like as long as I've lived in New Mexico, and that's a long time, we've always been fighting with Texas over water. And now there's an epic lawsuit going on, Supreme Court lawsuit. Kind of fill us in on what's going on with the Lower Rio Grande versus Texas and what this case is.
Well, and I will say certainly there have been issues since I was in law school, which is 30 years ago
Long
now.
time,
right? Where we've been having this struggle over the distribution of water in the Lower Rio Grande. And about 3 years ago, there was a change in the way that the irrigation districts down in southern New Mexico were sharing their water in the river, and we felt like that violated our compact. We've had a compact for since the 30s with Texas and Colorado and New Mexico on how we're going to divide the water in the Rio Grande. So we actually initiated a suit against the federal government, against the Bureau of Reclamation, and brought in the 2 irrigation districts and claimed that there was a violation of the compact there. Then this year in January, the state of Texas brought an action, or is attempting to bring an action in the U.S. Supreme Court against New Mexico, and our Constitution allows states to sue each other in the Supreme Court. So it's a rare kind of event.
Wow.
This is case number 141. So I think since the country started, that this is the 141st time that 2 states have sued each other in the Supreme Court. And so the legislature actually appropriated some money for us to move forward with the case. We filed our response brief against, and basically saying that the state of Texas doesn't have the right to bring the suit in the Supreme Court first off, and then if they do, then we'll.
So you're going to argue this? Do you get to
Court.
go and argue this before the justices?
I have a couple of good young lawyers that work for me too. I have argued in the Supreme Court. I argued last year on this Bull Cumming versus New Mexico case, which was a DWI case. So we don't know yet. I think the way that these cases go, it might be more than 2 years, before it actually comes for argument before the court. But either I will, or I actually have a lawyer who has a lot of experience. She used to work for the state of Montana, and so she worked on a suit called Montana versus Wyoming. So we have some experience in the agency to deal with that. But we think that it's very important to protect our water resources, and we sort of. Sometimes we kind of laugh about, Texas is trying to steal all of our water. I think I said Texas was rustling our water.
Yeah.
But the division of water on the border is such an important issue, and for us, it's all about protecting the long-term viability of the Rio Grande and the long-term viability of the water resources, not only for the farmers in the lower valley, but also for the city of Las Cruces, which is a growing, dynamic city, and we want to make sure that they have water resources. And if we want to bring industry down there, we need water for that. So it's important.
I know Aaron has another question, but I want to know if you can stay an extra couple of minutes.
Sure.
Because we're just really getting rolling. Aaron, do you have something for us?
Yeah, I had a question about. So there was a recent video depicted horse killing as relates to the issues of whether New Mexico will see horse slaughtering plant in the southern part of the state. Can you kind of give us a little background about that and what's currently happening with it?
This has generated probably more email and phone traffic for our office than almost any of the issues that we're working on.
It's been in the news a lot.
The baseline issue is that there's a slaughterhouse in Roswell, New Mexico, that wants to have the capability to slaughter horses for horse meat for human consumption. Now they would have to ship that to other countries because we don't allow human consumption of horse meat in the U.S. So there are legal issues that surround that. Senator Martinez has asked us for an opinion on whether or not it's the horse meat that would come from New Mexico would be safe for human consumption, because I think that there's an issue there. So my lawyers are looking at that. But then peripherally to that, there was one of their employees who posted a video on YouTube where he shot and killed a horse, ostensibly for his own consumption. And so, you know, there are questions about whether that violates our animal cruelty laws. There are exceptions for standard agricultural practices, but you know, I grew up on a ranch, and I guarantee you, we did not shoot horses to eat them.
No.
And so I'm very concerned, you know, that this actually was sort of the killing of horse for entertainment almost, you know, to make a point, and so that could be an issue. So we're looking at that too.
What's the reaction of the community down there? Do they accept this business?
You know, it's mixed, but certainly there are people who are saying, you know, we have a lot of horses, we have to do something, you know, to deal with this issue of overpopulation, and if we don't slaughter them here, then they'll haul them to Mexico or to Canada, and that's very difficult. You know, so there are those issues. But I would say that the great majority of people just don't perceive that horses are food animals.
Yeah.
No.
You know, and so I think that the great majority of people in New Mexico are not supportive of this. But there are certainly people on both sides.
You've got to follow the law on this too.
Yes.
So it can't be. That's a tough issue.
Sometimes there are things that we think are egregious, but they don't violate any law, and so that's difficult for me sometimes, because people go, well, how come you're not prosecuting these guys? And the truth is, I mean, we have to have a law, you know, that we can pursue to do that.
And then in those situations, can you go to the legislature and create laws to make sure?
We have actually the last 2 years we've had an attempt from NGOs and from our office to enhance our animal protection laws, but we've had sort of a hard time getting them through the legislature. They can be controversial.
Yeah.
About 2 minutes left, Gary. There's what's called a tobacco master settlement.
Yes.
And this could have some financial impact to New Mexico. Explain that briefly and what that is.
You know, something that people aren't really aware of so much. People will know, I think, that all the AGs in the country, -4, sued the big tobacco manufacturers a number of years ago over this issue about the fact that the state has health costs that are associated with the smoking of cigarettes. And so there was a settlement about 10 years ago, a little more than 10 years ago, where the tobacco companies agreed to pay damages in the amount of about $8 billion a year to the states to pay for those health impacts. But there now are new lawsuits where the tobacco companies are claiming that the states have not done what's called diligent enforcement, which is to say that we have to, part of our agreement is that we will make sure that other non-participants, you know, come in and sell cigarettes, cheap cigarettes or something. And it can be an issue in New Mexico, but we just finished our arbitration on the year 2003, whether we diligently enforce or not. So we're putting a lot of effort into following up on that and making sure that we get our resources in.
We're going to have to bring you back.
Okay.
Lots to discuss. Gary King, the Attorney General, with us here this morning on the Morning Brew. Thanks, Gary, for being with us.